it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, it's Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I'm really excited to bring you this guest today. I could kind of call her a neighbor as a fellow New Yorker, or actually an owner of a Brooklyn business. But Jennifer Young is so much more. She's a mechanical engineer who has found her way to be the CEO and owner of Brooklyn Robotic Foundry. It's all about young kids and their development and education around engineering, robotics, and all the things that are the buzzwords today and is so important. And there's a lot of misnomers around this. So really what I'm excited to talk to Jenny about today is what we know and what we don't know and what we should know. So Jenny Young, thank you for joining me here today on Her Success Story.
Thank you so much for having me. It feels like a huge honor to be here. Thank you.
Okay, let's get the backstory going first. How did this come about?
Sure. Yeah, it's such a good question. So I'm a mechanical engineer, but before that, I grew up in a household of my father's mechanical engineer. My mother is really good with her hands. And so my upbringing was different than a lot of other people's. We were always taking our toys apart. And we had a workshop in the garage in the basement, and we were always kind of making new things, taking the toys, turning them into something else. And so it was very much a childhood of exploring things. My mother is very crafty, so we would make things, in the kitchen. We would be making arts and crafts in the house. We would be gardening, kind of in the backyard. So
Very
it was
creative background.
It was a very creative background.
It's fabulous for a child.
Yeah, and it's something that a lot of kids don't have. I had my career in engineering, and then I was working at a software company in New York City, and we were doing those like Scantron bubble sheets where, those
Oh, yeah.
horrible bubble sheets where you never know if you fill it in right.
They're the bane of existence growing up.
Exactly, exactly. And so this company was doing assessments for teachers to kind of help kids assess the kids' reading levels. But really, what happened is I started thinking about how awful those Scantron sheets are and how much it makes education and learning super boring and really not creative and really not inspiring. And I started to think about my upbringing and how that wasn't what my parents emphasized. Then I was looking around and I was living in New York City. I was living in a 230 square foot apartment with my husband. And I was like, how are kids doing this? How are they taking their toys apart? How are they making things? How are they learning that failure is fun and is part of this process? And so that was when I quit. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this workshop space for city kids where I let them learn through their hands and kind of learn through this iterative process of it's okay if it doesn't work the first time. It's probably not supposed to. And then, as we go, it's going to kind of get to the point where it is the way you want it to be.
I have to say that's pretty bold and gutsy to walk away from a job with a high level education, high level, work, doing things. And let's call a spade as both kind of New Yorkers in this area. It's expensive here to walk away from your day job. There's a high cost of living. So that risk and the boldness to me is even a little elevated. And it's not just New York City, it's like any major city.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's incredibly brave and very gutsy.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's gutsy too. And I think you have to be a little strange to do it. My husband and I both started our businesses at exactly the same time. And we were living in 230 square feet, which a lot of people would not, in the suburbs, that's the size of a bathroom. There were times where my husband had big holes in his socks and was like, we don't have enough money to buy socks. So, well, I know how to sew. Let's, sew up these socks. And so you have to be scrappy. You have to be okay with taking that risk. Now, I was
You
lucky.
also have to be committed. You have to truly, truly believe. And you also have to have some sort of financial plan to figure it out. Kind of, sort of.
Sort of. I think for me, it was nice because I have a mechanical engineering degree. I knew that if it didn't work, I would just go get a job and I would get the money and it would be fine. And I knew that I could live off of a very low income to see if I could really bet on myself. And, my husband and I both did it. I worked part-time at Scholastic for a friend doing project management. That was the only money that both of us were bringing in. Then I went full time with my business and he started bringing just a little bit on his business. So you have to be creative, but it also gives you this freedom that you don't have when you're working for another person. And it gives you, I'm a very creative person. I like to have big ideas, and it allowed all of those ideas to kind of like
It's
wobble
to
in my head. And then I could throw them out and try it, and that's not something you can do when you work for another person.
I will say, I don't know if I talked about this much, but I haven't talked about it in a while. But in my husband and I's early days, we both started our own businesses. And it would be like, okay, as soon as if one of us wanted to do something, one of us would make enough money to just kind of sort of pay our overhead, you
Yes.
know, and then like the next one was like, okay, the next one's off and I'm building something. And then like, okay, I could pay these bills. Okay, well, I want to go and expand this. Okay, got it. Got your back. Go and expand this. And I'll pay. And it was a give or take for a long time to build that foundation.
Yeah, and it's a lot of trust too in each other, because a lot of people would not feel comfortable doing this. And that's okay, because the world is filled with different types of people.
We
And if
need
we were
all
all
kinds of
meant to
people in
be,
this world.
yeah, we need everybody, right? And so everyone's always like, wow, it's so amazing you're an entrepreneur. And I was like, yeah, but everybody can't be an entrepreneur, because then there would be nobody on the ground actually doing the stuff.
The work.
We have to have everybody, but it also is a big testament to your partnership that I found the right partner, where, and the same for you and your husband, where it's stressful for a lot of people to be living kind of on the edge of, are we going to be okay? For me, it's exhilarating, and it's exhilarating for him too, but you have to find a person where that's an
That could
okay thing.
work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tell me about Robot Foundry. Tell me about the concept and what it is. And you've touched a little bit, but I want to understand what the programming and who comes and why. And then I want to learn more. I have a whole bunch of curiosity here.
Sure, sure. Okay, I love curiosity. That's my favorite. Okay, so what we do is we teach robot classes to kids starting at age 2. So really, really little.
Wow.
Go all the way up through 8th grade, and we offer coding classes. So the projects get harder as the kids get older. It's a mobile business, so you don't have a brick and mortar store. We train our franchise owners how to do this. We train their teachers. They have this little rolly cart system. And then they bring all these kits of parts, and then they go into other people's organizations. So you might go to a library and do a story art hour, plus you're building a robot. You might go into a school during the day because the principal wants to augment their science class. You might go into an after school program. So this is something that the kids do after school. Sometimes they do
Nice.
soccer, sometimes they do robots. You do birthday parties at people's houses. You do full day sessions like Martin Luther King Jr. Day when kids are out of school. Then you're going to have kids for a full day, and you're going to do a full day session, and you do summer programs. So we also do adult events, which is really fun. I just did one last night in Scarsdale where it's like a corporate team building event, and then you're building robots and people are, kind of
Brilliant.
walking in wine. So it's got a large breadth of different verticals that you can do this with.
What do you hear back more than anything? What do you hear back from the parents? Because I remember when my kids were young, working mom, and like there was always like looking for good after school programs, different things to expose them to different things. And I'm always curious, what you hear from the kids, but also what do you hear back from the parents that pick up? What do you hear back at that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends. It depends who the parent is. Some parents say, whoa, I wish I had had this as a child. This is the precise thing that I needed. Where were you? And I was like, well, I created this because it's what, it
That's
really is for
what we
me.
all needed.
Yeah, it's what we all needed. So there's those parents. There are parents that say, this is incredible for my child. My child is not a sporty kid. My child has these other interests, and it's been hard to find a community around who my child is and who their identity is. That's a beautiful thing, because we often get kids that don't, not everybody, but some of the kids we get don't do well in a typical classroom setting. They're not the type of kid who's going to sit there and listen and just kind of take in the information. They maybe aren't rule followers.
And I think it's interesting here for a second of talking about, and this is not my area of expertise at all, but we all are different kind of learners.
Yes.
And in school, when you were talking about those bubble sheets, I think my whole body just cringed,
Hmm.
right? I
Hmm.
wasn't that kind of learner. I was terrible at reading and comprehension. And then you had to answer those things and fill it. Just the whole thought about it was like a visceral reaction. So we
Yeah.
all learn differently.
Yes.
And the creative way, and the building way and the way of different expanding your mind, I think is so important. And it continues to do something that's really important, and that's stop labeling.
Yes. And that is the problem with the public school system in the US is it is designed around a certain learner. And there are so many learners that are not that way. I wasn't that way. I hated the Scantron sheets. It gives me anxiety wondering if I filled it out right, trying to interpret what I think the question is compared to what how I'm answering it.
Reading it right.
It's hard for a lot of kids. And so I do feel like we have created a safe space for those children that learn through building, that learn in a spatial way. That's the type of kid that does extremely well with us. And then we're doing friendship connections as well. So oftentimes we'll be like, hey, little Jimmy got along super well with Fred. Do you guys should we exchange your information and now you can go and have a play date? It's more than robots. It's really this bigger thing of creating a place to empower all different types of kids, all different types of learners to really feel like, oh, I got this. I'm good at this. And this is something that I enjoy.
Okay, so I have to ask you this, like going back to business for a second. So I
Sure.
love the concept. Leaning in, like I'm already like, okay, I have a granddaughter. Okay, she's 7 months. Okay, so all right, so 2 years, not that far away. It's going to happen really fast. We're going to find programs like this. There's the concept of starting a business, and then there's the concept of taking this and growing it to a business that is now nationally franchising. That's like that baby fish, and now you're talking about big, big, big whales. How'd you get here? Like, what transpired? I have somebody like, how long does this take? What gave you the initiative to do this? How many people did you talk to? Give
All
me
of it.
information. I have so many
Yeah,
questions. So
you
just
want
give
it
me
all. You want it
information.
all. It's a process and it's a real process. And a lot of people don't take it seriously and then it fails. And I didn't want to do that. In 2015, I don't even know exactly how I found out about franchising, but in 2015, I said, you know what? I am going to sit down and I'm going to go to conferences. I'm going to go to panels. I'm going to learn and listen to what people are doing and hear other franchise systems and listen to where their pain points are. Where did they mess up? And so I hired a woman that I'd worked with for many years at the education company, and she and I worked for every Friday, 8 hours a day for an entire year. And we said, okay, let's listen to what everyone's saying. Let's look at what's on Jenny's plate. What are things that we can take off of Jenny's plate? And what are the systems and the backbone that we need to set up in order to make the entire company a system that can be replicated? Because that's what you need. You need to be able to have operations manuals. You need to be able to have everything that was in my head needed to get out so that I could see where the gaps were and then be able to train other people on it. So we worked for many years. She's now our chief operating officer. She just
Smart.
joined 2 years ago. We hired consultants along the way that more than anything were really great at connecting us to other people in the world that we could use, that they could be mentors to us. We got connected to this amazing company called CGI that helps you figure out your franchise recruitment process, because this is not the business I started. I started a business where I was designing little robots and working with kids.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore. I now have an operations manager who manages that side of the company. And now I have to learn this new thing, which is how do you recruit people, have real conversations with them, see if it's a great connection, and then move them to the path of being a small business owner. That's a very different thing than what I had been doing before. That's not engineering. This is very much,
No, this is engineering a business as scaling a company. It's a
yeah,
very
it's
different kind of
very,
engineering.
yeah, yeah. And for me, I'm like a lifelong learner. I love learning new stuff. I kind of need my brain to be constantly stimulated to make sure that I'm, happy. I'm just loving it. I'm loving understanding the psychology behind things, understanding how do you really get to a person's why? How do you make sure that they understand who you are? How do you make sure that the culture of your brand is documented in a way that new people who want to join the brand really understand, like, this is who we are. Is this a good fit for you? And how do you communicate that? We have 9 franchise owners now. How do you make sure that they all feel totally supported? Because it is my job to make sure that they feel supported. They have everything that they need from us. If we aren't doing something quite right, that we can morph and kind of change to be able to give them what they need. And so that's a fun new process too, where we now have partnered with incredibly intelligent people from all different backgrounds, from finance, from,
I'm very curious about this.
yeah.
So, the first thing I'm thinking is, oh, do you need to be like a background in engineering and robotics? Do you need a background in childhood education? Do you need a background in? I'm running through these lists in my head saying, okay, what is, you think about Dunkin' Donuts franchises or different franchises out there. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I can figure out how to make coffee. Like, right, there's a system. And what does a franchise owner for Robot Foundry look like? What is their background? Where are they coming from?
I know it's so funny. Everyone always thinks they should be an engineer. We have one engineer. I would say no. I mean, she's wonderful and she's lovely and it's fun that she's an engineer. But the thing is, we are looking for a person that loves sales. We are looking for a person that is comfortable in a room of strangers just talking and talking about what it is that we do and talking about, the opportunity that we can give to their school. So it's really more of a salesperson. It's an outgoing person. It's not a high pressure sales. We sell really off of relationships. What we make is amazing. You have to totally believe in the product. It's a pretty easy thing to sell, but you have to be a person that, it's the person that when a person moves to town, you say, oh, go talk to Jenny. She knows everybody and everyone. That is the person that we're looking for. And then that person also has to be a human that has managed other people before. Because the way you grow the business is you've got new organizations, you've got new partnerships at schools and daycare centers, and then you hire more and more teachers. So you have to be a person that knows how to coach. You know how to be a person that knows how to mentor. You have to be a person that people want to work for. That's key. Yeah. And that you want to be a person where people want to stay working for you and feel delighted to be there because your teachers are the face of the brand. You need them to be like giddy and happy when they come to work and be delighted to go and build with those robots. So it's very much a people person.
And I like that. It's a people person because it's a people person you're interacting with, from libraries to schools to education programs and camp programs. It's a people person. It's a person also who enjoys and is dedicated to developing young, I would
Exactly.
think. They have to
Exactly.
have that heart. They don't have to be that teacher, but they have to have that heart and care.
Exactly. We have a extremely complicated and beautiful and well documented way to help onboard your teachers. So you don't have to be an expert in classroom management. You definitely don't have to be an expert in robots. I can teach a 2-year-old a robot. I can teach an adult, but you have to be a person that is caring. You have to be a person that people gravitate towards and want to have as their leader. That's what we're looking for.
Well, the one thing I have to weigh in and say, I don't think I've ever met somebody who started a franchise who was an engineer, which means any person who buys into the franchise knows the SOPs and processes and the attention to detail is going to be 100% spot on. And I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. When I was a little kid, I had this frog and I really loved this frog. I had grown it since a tadpole. And I wrote a whole instruction manual. My neighbor came and took care of this frog. And I wrote a whole instruction manual of all the details of how to take care of this frog. It wasn't hard to take care of the frog, but I thought it might be.
But there was a manual.
And there was a manual and there was drawings and it was extremely detailed. When I was done, the frog was still alive and I was delighted that it made it through the vacation and she took care of it. And she said, Jenny, when you grow up, you should write instruction manuals. And I was like, Madame Swan, that's what we called her. Madame Swan, that's not a job. That's not what I'm going to do when I grow up. And now I'm like, oh, this is what I do.
Oh,
I like
such a job.
Yeah, of course it's a job. I mean, I was like a little kid, I didn't understand the world. But now I'm like, oh, Madame Swan was totally right. This is exactly what I'm doing. So I think it must have been inside the brain of me as an engineer is I like to write processes. I like to think about, is it the most efficient? Is there ways to make it better? Yeah, I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of page operations manuals. We have all of these different tools that we have designed to be like, okay, I think this is going to help this person. Yeah, so I think we're really good at that.
So, what's your vision? There's a saying that you went from here to there, right? We started with a concept, you had a program. I'm hesitant to call it a school. I'm calling it a program because within schools or whatever. And now you have a you're running a company that's a national franchise and franchising nationally and probably, and then from there,
Yeah.
what's your vision from where you see and how often do you then work on this vision? Because it's so much we talk about, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, but then we put it out there and then we put it aside.
We don't put it aside. So we have a vision. We're going to world domination. Robotic world domination is what we're going to do. We're starting in the US. We'll start a little small. We're going across the US right now. We have a candidate in California. So I'm pretty sure pretty soon we'll sign that person. And we want to go international. Our Philadelphia franchise owners are working right now to see if they can get into all of Philadelphia public schools.
Wow.
And that just kind of makes me want to cry. It's like, if we
Wow.
can get this funded in lower income areas where that whole population is going to be given this opportunity, for some of those learners are not going to have hands-on experience until they see something like ours. And now it's going to go across a whole city. That for me is like, whoa, that's major success, right? But in terms of a vision, we have a couple of us that are at the manager level, and we are always looking at, like, here's what our forecast is. How are we going to our forecast? What is our forecast for 3 years, for 5 years, for, after that? And my background is manufacturing. So the thing where people say, what is the most exciting part of the future for you? I love education. I love children, but I actually really like the production side of things. I have done kind of massive supply chain agreements. I have worked through procurement. I have figured out how to make manufacturing lines more efficient. This is what I did
Yeah.
before I started the business. And so for me, it's like, wow, there will be a point where this factory is huge and I will get to go in there and do all the manufacturing engineering behind it and really make it super efficient. So that, I think, is the thing where I will be like, oh, I'm so proud of myself. I have now created my own infrastructure and
Sure.
factory and everything. Yeah.
I have to ask, what has surprised you in this journey?
From the franchising journey in particular, it has surprised me that I have enjoyed talking to and meeting candidates and helping them work through the process of figuring out, is this the right fit for them? I would say, if you were to ask me, am I good at sales? I would say, no, I'm horrible at sales, because if someone's like, I don't want it, I'm like, okay, okay, that's fine. That's totally fine. But I don't think that's what sales is. I think sales is really more about relationships and really hearing and understanding the other person. And that has been just a skill that I don't think that I've had to utilize in my engineering career. And it's very surprising to me that I like it, but I'm really enjoying it.
I agree with you 1,000%. People who knew me way back in the day, and I'm like, I can't believe like you do sales. You never talk to anyone. I'm like, I know I didn't talk to like all those like people in the crowds, but like I had always deep relationships.
Yeah.
And to me, the greatest sales is about building great relationships and being a good listener and being interested in what's best for somebody. To me, it's okay if it's not a right fit, it's not a right fit for anyone. And that, because if it's a forced fit, it's not going to go well.
No, it's not going to go well. No one's going to be happy. And then everybody
No.
leaves. Yeah. I
So, what
totally.
is one tip you could leave for our listeners today? Women leaders who are looking to build, who are looking to scale, that has
That's
been
such a
helpful to you.
Okay, I'm going to answer it in terms of, if you have a business and you're thinking about franchising it, I would say my biggest advice there is, do your homework and ensure that you are giving yourself space as the CEO to really have a vision for the business and to really be able to give the operations to somebody else so that you can make sure you're working on the business and not really in the business. So I guess it doesn't necessarily just have to be franchising, but I feel like for myself, there is this tendency to just want to dig into the weeds and then forget to kind of come up here and
Yeah.
look, say, where do I want to be? Is everything going the way that I want it to? So if you can find, everyone can, you just have to put your mind to it. Can you find the space in your day to make sure that you are coming up here and watching things work? One of the things that we would do is, every Friday, we pulled it aside to look at working on the business. And even to this day, I take all Thursdays and I say, nobody can meet with me on a Thursday. And I'm only doing high level sales stuff. So it might be figuring out a sales strategy. It might be implementing something that I told myself I was going to do last week, but nobody's allowed to meet with me. My team knows. And I'm just here, but I'm up here being able to
You're
look.
not in the weeds.
I'm not in the weeds. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Exactly.
Thursday's the day that's no weeds, that they're working on the growth of the business, the where it's going next. I love that. And I love that you have a day a week and everybody knows it.
Yeah. And
I
they're
think
so
that's
great
brilliant.
about it. And they'll tell me, like, it's your day. Why are you talking to me? And I'm like, okay, right. And then I turn off Slack, I turn off the email, and I'm here by myself,
Yeah.
thinking about the things I need to think about.
Jenny Young, thank you so much for joining me here today on Her Success Story. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just so fun. It's just like a lovely conversation.
And that's what these interviews, listeners, that's what these interviews are always meant to be, as an interesting conversation. As if you're sitting here at a table with us, on a couch with us, having a cup of coffee or whatever it is your go-to, and in just leaning in and learning and enjoying. I will say at this point in the show, this is what I have to say. Take a deep breath in. Think about one thing. What was your one takeaway from our conversation, from Jenny and I's talk, and all the tidbits Jenny shared and learned? What's your one takeaway that matters and that is valuable to you? Somewhere, make a note of it. Doesn't matter where. I don't care if it's a phone, a piece of paper, just somewhere. And then make a decision on what action you're going to take from there. And that is our gift forward to yourself and your gift to you. If you found the conversation interesting, please share it with others and feel free to pass it forward. I look forward to many, many more wonderful interviews. Jenny, this was a joy. I can't wait to see you. And to your success and the success of Robot Foundry and many, many children being impacted by it.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
To shine.